Side cannons! It's me, your orangest boy. Why am I so orange right now? I couldn't tell you. Hold on, let me see if I can, make some adjustments. There we go. Now I look better. Here I am, folks, once again. I'm torn into pieces. How do you do, y'all? Tea with the cannons. Gems is correct after a fashion. Why am I late today? Well, I was getting my tea. That much went fine. Got my tea. Good. Cool. Set it down on my desk. Great. Sat myself down to the desk and went ahead, bumped the desk. Did definitely spill it all over the place everywhere. So that's where I'm at. Folks, how do you do? I got some things I want to talk about before we actually get started today. First of all, a bit of review. That way we know where we're going in. Igor and Illyria, our two characters. Chat playing Igor, our sneaky ghost boy, sort of stealthy, a little bit more cerebral. I playing Illyria, are kind of on the tougher side, not quite as much of a planner, runs a little bit more on instinct, and fairly recently changed as well. Although, I think Illyria has a strong idea of what's going to happen, but they are certainly intimidated by it. We've got some news. Quite a bit of it, as a matter of fact. We have been bumming around, trying to case the joint in the town of Dawngreet before suddenly, in a terrible turn of events, we fight some hunters in an event that may or may not be related to that. Igor is killed, becomes a ghost. Illyria has a battle in the woods with some wolves, but wolves that wear scarves. And then, as Illyria is wounded and sick and doing terribly, we are found by some folks who bring us up to Castle Vesperale. Vesperale Academy is where we find ourselves now. We have had a bit of an introduction to the school. This ruined castle, this old burned out carcass of a castle, this is a school. It's a school for Duskin. Young vampires, lycan, ghosts, and the occasional other will find a bit of a home here, it would seem. Now, this castle does not have the charm of a Hogwarts. Rather than paintings that very helpfully offer advice, they instead try to crawl out like the Grudge and find you. Professors may disappear, shattering into shadows tossed onto walls by torchlight. And now we find ourselves in a bit of a different situation. We did manage to sneak out of the castle, maybe easier than one would expect. We might find out why that is, but I can certainly tell you, we've snuck out to perhaps not a great situation. We find ourselves in the ruins of an old tower, it would seem. One that couldn't even be considered a tower ruin anymore. It's simply a staircase out in the forest. And this is roundabout where we find ourselves. A few arches and a staircase, and this is where we're at as Illyria is trying to find a new spear shaft. And Illyria and Igor sort of have been doing some plotting as far as what is our next steps. And that's when boars start to crash into the forest. And that is where we find ourselves. Now, I don't want to launch in quite yet because I think we've got a couple of things to discuss first. Jem says, a staircase leading to nowhere, just for show. Yeah, we can surmise it probably led somewhere at some point, but at this point, no. This is about all we got. A few things I want to talk about first. To start with, I want to thank Deathrave very much. I don't know if Deathrave is in right now. Hopefully Deathrave will be jumping in later, but Deathrave has been thinking about some ideas for vows for Igor. Now, we're going to be reviewing those vows at the start and the end of every session from here on out. Just so that you all know sort of what's on your lists right now. But Deathrave has provided some thoughts, and I really appreciate it, Deathrave. Deathrave says, I feel like I should mention some of these are for laughs. I tend to play characters that are not overly romantic, but definitely on the flirty side. Feel free to count them out if that's not everybody's thing. These are just some ideas after all. Number 1, a group of some trusted friends. Maybe a medium-length goal. We talked about possibly joining a club. What if we formed our own club? At least one vampire, one lycan, one ghost, which focused on using our individual skills to accomplish things from combat to surviving, even how to obtain a position of power in the world of the normies. Interesting. So some aspirations of sort of forming up your own crew. Fantastic. Deathrave says, number 2, learn enough about alchemy to be able to physically help in combat situations through alchemy. Short to medium goal. Number 3, find out if Tarua is... is married. No, but Tarua is like 8 years older than you. Number 4, find a spot for our friend group to meet and hang out for emergencies. And then number 4, learn about cultures of the world, supernatural beings and normal cultures, enough to be able to navigate through most social situations. Number 5, learn specifically who killed Igor and why. Number 6, whatever classes Igor does take, finish at the top of class for each class or for specific ones. Number 7, go on a date with Pinelli or someone we may not have met yet. And number 8, learn our biggest strengths and weaknesses as a ghost. Number 9, maybe take a class on the art of deception too. There we go. Actually, one more thing. Since between Illyria and Igor, he seems to kind of be the brains. Maybe also learn about magical beasts / potential foes and what their weaknesses are to give him an edge in the combat situations as well. All right, so a decent bit of learning to do. We certainly have some of these things on here as vows already, and we can start to explore some of these other things as well. And, you know, it might not be that I make every single thing a vow as per se, but... even things that I don't make a vow, I'm going to take all of these things in this list, especially ones that others come in and say, you know what, actually, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I am going to be, even if they don't end up as vows, they will end up in the campaign in some way. I'm going to strive to include all of these things. This is my favorite thing about games, is we are telling a story together, and if part of the story that you want to tell includes these things, well, by golly, we're going to do that. We're going to do what I say. Let's look at vows. Our current vows. Igor, our trickster ghost, you've got 5 vows. I believe both of us do. This one is an easy one. Case the Crossroads town before the Wild Stallions return. Currently at 6 out of 10 progress. And basically, y'all choose how much progress is important to you. I think my default is going to be 7. Unless y'all sort of tell me otherwise, I'm going to look at some of these things, and depending on how important they are, I may sort of just decide at 7, that's the one to do. But y'all can let me know if you really like tracking the character sheets, that sort of thing. The system for that is however far the progress track is, we use that to replace the D6. And so basically, I'm just going to roll 2D10, and then we compare our progress on the track as if it were our dice roll. So I'm going to roll these 2d10 here. This one is a 2 and a 10, which means that at a 6, we fall in between those two, which makes it a weak hit. Does that make sense? Basically, we do that instead. We sort of compare it to our progress track instead of rolling our d6 and adding some stats to it. So something to keep in mind. The further along that progress track is, the more likely that the quest will be able to be finished without further complications. A second vow for Igor. Avenge his own death. This one is second hardest. Second from the hardest, and I don't believe we've made any progress on that, except, yes, we absolutely have. Hold on a second. We certainly have. Let's see. I believe you get to... Oh, never mind. I marked it already. Okay, we're good. Number 3, make a good impression on Pinelli. It seems like Pinelli is hesitant. To sort of consider herself a friend to Igor yet. Igor didn't make a perfect first impression. Number 4, pursue academics. This one's sort of a middle-of-the-road goal, which is an excellent spot for it because, not too difficult. It won't take too long, but it also isn't going to pay out tons and tons of XP. It's a good middle-of-the-road goal, and you are at 1 out of 10 for that one. And then finally, History of Duskin. Just sort of a light understanding of the history of Duskin. This one we called second highest, a dangerous one. And this one currently at 0 out of 10, but just trying to understand what Duskin are all about. So there we go. I just wanted to review those really quickly. That way we can sort of like we can see what things it will be sensible for y'all to pursue. Of course, you may do whatever you wish, but if you pursue these things, then we can start to mark progress on them, etc., and potentially find ourselves getting some XP pretty soon. I want to know generally what's on Igor's mind. It'll help me sort of develop the campaign as we move along. But while y'all are letting me know, Illyria's vows. Number 1, a very difficult one. Return to Brackwater, my hometown. Ready to settle down. Number 2, the Wild Stallions want me to bring something south for them. I'm at 2 out of 10 for that one. Discover the truth of the underbrush. That one's quite a difficult one. That is an extreme vow, and we have made a tiny bit of progress on that one. Number 4, find out about my condition. I'm at 3 out of 10 for that one. That one's not doing too bad. And then number 5, pursue expeditioneering. That one is a formidable one, and I think we are going to be making some progress on that one hopefully soon. All right, folks. Y'all let me know what it is you wish to, what sorts of things do you think are on your list, on your plate? What's going through Igor's mind right now? And with that, folks, I think officially we are ready to begin Night School at Vesperale Academy. Through the darkness crashes a herd of wild boar. We see these tusks flashing in the darkness, massive. We see stripes on the backs of these bristly creatures, and just as Illyria raises just the blade of this spear, this is all they've been carrying with them. We're out in the woods right now looking for something to turn into a spear shaft for this, but we've not found one yet. Raises this knife, it flashes in the moonlight, and that's when we hear a yell from up the hill. We are off of the parade grounds here. The parade grounds being this sort of clearing in between the large forest and the castle grounds itself. I should say the castle itself. Here in the forest, we have found ourselves at a what can't even be considered any longer part of a ruined tower. No more than about a story and a half high. No additional floors from it. It is simply sort of the outer curve, a staircase winding up maybe 15 or 20 feet with a few arches underneath. That is all that remains. We are currently in the forest hunting for a spear shaft, but as Illyria raises this weapon, the only blade that we've carried for months now, we hear a shout from up on the parade grounds. We are sort of downhill from the parade grounds, so we look up into the moonlight, and the moonlight, I think Igor especially notices, is much easier to see in than you've ever experienced it before. It feels not quite like daylight, but you can see much more than you ever remember being able to see, even on a full moon as it is right now. As Illyria raises this blade, a shout from up on the parade grounds. Whoa, 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 whoa. No, 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 no. Put that down. Just get up on the ruins. I'm coming. And it is the dwarf with the mohawk from inside the Great Hall. This dwarf, like I said, mohawk of bristly hair up the middle, and then it continues through thick eyebrows and down the beard. This dwarf starts to charge down toward the forest, and in the space between the parade grounds on this sharp little hill here, before he reaches the tree line, this dwarf begins to change. The spiky bristles along the scalp that form the mohawk extend down his back, and his shirt rips as he charges forward. His hands drop forward onto all fours and continues at a run as his tusks, as we saw, a little bit like an orc, even though he's a dwarf. These tusks grow outward, and we see, before even reaching the tree line, no longer is this a dwarf. It is instead a massive, massive boar with razor tusks, an enormous bristly mohawk down its back, down its spine. A wereboar, and as we are looking around, we can guess some of the rest of these are wereboar as well, if not all of them. We sort of go back to back here, Illyria and Igor, and looking around the forest, Illyria doesn't have quite the same vision in the moonlight that Igor does, but Illyria does growl a bit. Igor says, "This is good, I think." I'm not sure about that. We need to get somewhere safer. One of these wereboars, sort of squealing and with a glint in its eyes, comes charging toward us, and this massive wereboar that used to be the dwarf suddenly charges through the arch and intercepts it on its way. It shoulders this other wereboar, and they both go tumbling off like a car crash into the brush. We've been defended for just a moment, but we need to get to somewhere a bit safer. Jump up onto these ruins. I don't know how well they can climb, but at least I can hold off one direction. Okay, we are officially going to enter the fray. We are, I think, not quite ambushed, but enough to count. And so we are going to jump up here. Okay, against a 6 and a 9, we have got a weak hit. Where in the forest are we? If you look at the map here, we are roundabout, like, beneath my microphone here. We're just off of the parade grounds, not too deep into the forest. We're sort of in between the parade grounds and then this little puddle of lights that we see a few 100 meters into the forest itself. So Igor's going to climb the stairs. I think it makes the most sense. You're delayed, you lose an advantage, or you face a new danger. Suffer -1 momentum. Okay. As these wereboar skid by you, some of them just sort of like, they don't seem to pay a ton of attention to you. We're not being hunted like we were in the forests a few episodes ago. Those wolves wanted a piece of us. These wereboars, some of them will charge at Igor and then suddenly veer off. Some of them will charge toward Igor, come to a screeching halt, and then start pawing the ground there, sort of looking around. Many of them are simply crashing into one another as they charge through the woods here. And occasionally, one of them will skid past us with these razor-sharp tusks, but more importantly, simply their massive size. These things are like the size of Harley-Davidson motorcycles, even on the light side. The very heaviest ones, the very biggest one is absolutely the one that used to be a dwarf with the mohawk. And he is enormous. We're talking like VW Beetle enormous. This is a huge, huge creature, and it is doing its best to sort of like defend the two of us against this onslaught here, but it's not so much we're being hunted, it's a stampede. Like the Lion King. As you jump up there, Igor says, "Try not to injure them. I think they're students." "They're students? Well, I suppose that makes sense. We are in Crazy Town after all." I'm going to try and jump my own way up here, and with my edge how it is, I am going to get a full success. I'm going to go ahead and take +1 momentum here, and the two of us are up atop these ruins. Illyria still holds that spearhead in a tight grip. Not quite sure what else to do, as the two of us sort of back up this staircase. We can see the castle, the lights from the castle far above, and as we back up this staircase here, we're sort of on an island in this writhing sea of bristly, wiry wereboar hair. Now we look down into the forest, and it's dark. I think Igor is able to see okay, and again, Illyria is smelling. Illyria can sniff, 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 and is having an alright time sort of perceiving what is where. But here's where we find ourselves, in this ruin here, and as we back up this staircase, Illyria points back up to where that dwarf came from, up toward the castle, up toward the edge of the parade grounds, and there we can see a group of 6 individuals. Now, it's hard to tell who most of them are, but 2 of them make, I would say, a pretty recognizable silhouette. One of them is the absolutely jacked orc woman, Bella, we've heard her called, and then another is that human man with the wide leather hat studded with animal teeth. Those are 2 of the 6, and we can surmise that the rest are those hunters that Igor met in the forest. They simply stand in a line, silhouetted with the moonlight at their back. They are dark shapes against the dim lights of the torchlight in the castle. And they just look on. Illyria is going to look around for exit routes here. I think Illyria says, "I think I'm going to try for a distraction, and maybe if I can find a loose stone here, we can throw something off into the forest and try to run the other direction. This is going to take some doing." Oh, come on. Oh, no! Dang it. Okay, with a notable success or a notable failure, because we've got matching challenge dice here, I think this is going to be my wits or my edge, and I don't think either one of them is big enough. Yeah, neither one of these is going to be enough for me to score a strong hit. As Illyria hunts for a bit of loose masonry, Illyria is teetering side to side, looking down into this dark mass of wereboars. Another set of wereboars crashes into one another and skids out underneath one of these arches here. Illyria is furiously pulling at bits of masonry, big blocks of it, and these are ruins, after all. Illyria pulls on the wrong block, and out from underneath Illyria crumbles part of this ruin. One of these arches just crumbles in on itself, and Illyria falls through. This is what I get for a miss on matching challenge die. This is a twist, and it's a twist that did not go in my favor. Illyria lands, just knocking all of the wind out of himself. These wereboar crash around. One of them thunders toward Illyria and jumps over, managing not to hurt Illyria, but these creatures are clearly not entirely in control of themselves. Sandra's wondering if Igor transforms into mist, moves to location X, becomes visible, transforms into mist again, then can we go the other way? You can certainly give it a shot, Igor. This is going to come down to how the dice treat you. But Igor, you are going to try and manifest here. Okay, that is a full success. That is going to put you, right now you are at a 4 on your haunt tracker. This is going to give you sort of tokens to spend, as it were, to improve what you're trying to do, as long as you are trying to use sort of your ghostly nature to accomplish it. But transforming into a cloud of mist and sort of floating around, that would absolutely count. Certainly it is going to take some effort here. So yeah, we're going to sort of handle it one location at a time, but you hear Illyria sort of gasping for breath down below. I think Illyria is indeed going to take a clash here. I think I've pretty clearly lost initiative. But as Illyria sort of tries to stand up, barely even able to sit up right now. So I do an additional harm. So basically, the harm that I want to do is probably not much. I think Illyria recognizes this, but is also absolutely terrified. Igor, you hear kind of a snarl from below. Illyria and slashes out at this nearest shape just as a reaction, and doing so, when Illyria's hand comes back, the fingertips have claws in them and have just a little bit of blood, a glancing blow. But Illyria sort of shakes their head and comes back to. Meanwhile, up above, Illyria has initiative here. Igor is going to try and turn into mist. Once at location X, I want Igor to make a lot of noise before turning into mist again. Okay, here we go. That is a full hit without even needing to use your haunt. Igor, you rush forward and sort of, almost like a cloud of smoke hitting a wall, you just... and you reform next to a tree. You start to make a lot of noise. Over here! Hey! Hey! Over here! Come on! Sort of, you beat your hand against a tree, which doesn't make the noise you assumed that it would, but instead, the tree starts to sort of creak in the wind. Just sort of making that spooky tree noise that you get when occasionally a branch finds its way to rub against another one. Quite the haunted forest noise. And with that, these boar, some of them do indeed turn your direction. You hear one of these boar, and you see that it is indeed the one with the massive mohawk, the largest of these, the one that is in fact a teacher. This beak, the wereboar seems to be distressed by what you've done here. A bunch of the wereboar thunder in your direction, and we shall see in a moment where that takes you. I think Igor ducks behind this tree here to try and put something between yourself and these boar. You don't know how hurt you can be in your ghost form, but it doesn't matter right now, because these things are absolutely enormous and totally feral right now. It's terrifying enough that I think it totally skips your mind that you're a ghost. That doesn't matter for the moment. Meanwhile, Illyria is separated from Igor suddenly. This is precisely not what Illyria likes. And Illyria is going to try and charge forward to try and escape this sort of being surrounded by these things. Illyria is going to, I think, just sort of like duck and dodge. You have certainly secured an advantage here, so I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to count this as my +1 move, and I'm going to charge forward. Okay, so that is a weak hit for me as I'm trying to face danger to get on out of here. I've succeeded, but at a troublesome cost. As I rush forward into the forest here, with this stampede of these wereboars all around me, one of them catches me in a glancing blow. Illyria already, not feeling great, certainly feeling much better than they were prior, but now has taken kind of a gash along the leg and continues to limp on forward. As Illyria rushes toward Igor. Some of these boar start to sort of get distracted and turn toward the creature that is much more visible, Illyria. Igor is fairly well hidden, but Igor is going to try and once again turn the tide of this thing. Igor once again and reforms another little way away, sort of leading vaguely back toward the castle, but also off to the side so that Illyria can sort of follow the other direction up toward the castle and hopefully get away from these boar. The weak hit here, I think you do manage to help Illyria out, and certainly these boar are distracted by you. There is quite the sort of thunderous tumult here as they rush forward. And Igor, with these things sort of like kind of on Illyria's tail, you push yourself just a little bit too hard. And as one of these boar rushes by you, you also get caught in the leg. And it burns. It's not like a wound that you've felt before, but you do indeed find yourself injured. You've done some dangerous things since becoming a ghost. Not top of the line, but, you know, you've had the occasional scrape and bump here in the woods. These things didn't seem to affect you, but for whatever reason, this boar tusk has done so. And you take one harm here as this glancing blow knocks off of you. It seems that you are not entirely safe from these creatures, whether it's because they are Duskin or for some other reason. You are not totally safe from them. Sandra is wondering, what does the wound sort of seem like? Well, it sort of feels not quite like an injury that you would have sustained in life. It is sort of a raggedness. You can see that your ghastly clothes are torn, which I think when you look down at yourself, I don't know precisely what you see. I don't know sort of what, it's not necessarily what you were wearing when you died, it's much more like sort of what you imagine yourself being. Not in your wildest dreams, but like when you think of yourself, just in a glancing thought, what do you imagine yourself wearing, Igor? That's what you're wearing, and it has got a big tear in it, and this tear sort of like, when you look down at the wound as you sort of start to limp behind trees and such, trying to evade these boar that are charging through, now knowing you can be injured, when you look down at this wound, it's not that you're bleeding some sort of ectoplasm or anything, you are simply less cohesive, or less present in that spot, in an area about the size of your palm, about the size of your hand. You're just sort of foggier, mistier. You're less corporeal. It seems like this injury is one that sort of contributes to your dissolution. In that same way, where you could feel yourself before, if you didn't focus, you would sort of disappear back into this dark cave that you can see on your periphery at all times. This wound feels like it drags you just a little further back into that cave. Igor, you are actually in potentially rough shape here. You have got 1 health out of 5. You are not doing great right now. I think Illyria, seeing you dodge off in the other direction, Illyria has to make a choice here. Is Illyria going to try and charge up toward the castle or head toward Igor? You know what? First, let me see. Can Illyria see that you have been injured? Yeah, with a strong hit here, Illyria sees as you sort of like hold onto your leg, and Illyria, I think, gasps, thinking like, oh, Igor can be hurt after all. Which I think is terrifying enough. Illyria is going to rush off toward you. You have managed, Igor, to sort of head off a section of these wereboar. Not all of them, but it does mean that even though you are sort of being actively pursued by them, you're being actively pursued by maybe 20% of what was in the other clearing. As Illyria is going to charge into the forest after you, we sort of are leaving the circular ruins, the stair ruins behind us. And I would say these stair ruins seem to be the biggest landmark here, so whenever we come back here, remember, these stair ruins are sort of part of this forest. They may be an important landmark later. I don't have any specifics for you right now, but just when I say the stair ruins, this is what I'm talking about. Sanders says, yes, going toward the castle if possible. So Illyria is going to try and sneak off in your direction. Illyria is going to charge forward, throwing caution to the wind here, and just desires only to reach Igor. Igor, you've managed to head many of them off, but crashing into trees, knocking bark and loose branches down onto your ghastly head. These boar continue to charge around, once again, not being hunted, just a stampede, and you are the most distracting, interesting thing going on right now. I think you can guess, Igor, that these are probably not, like, mature lycan. We know where we're at here. We're surrounded by young Duskin who don't necessarily know how to control themselves. Illyria charges through, leaping over some of these things, and unfortunately, in the process of doing so, catches their hand on one of these tusks here, using it to pull one of these boar over to the side, and is going to take some damage here. But Illyria manages to crash with their back against the same tree as Igor, with boar constantly crashing into it and around it on all sides. Sandra is wondering, I'd like to go to the castle if possible, but maybe both characters can ride a boar to the castle. Igor says to Illyria, if I get close to the castle wall, I might be able to walk through it. I don't know. Maybe we can ride boar up to the castle. Illyria says, looking at their hand, I'm willing to give it a shot. Just don't hold on to the tusks. They are as sharp as they look. Maybe if we can get a hold of those bristles on the back of them, these crests. And looking out into the dark shapes here in the forest, as some of them charge by, thunk, one of them hits a tree and sort of in a daze stands and shakes for a second. This is a wild boar. Short rear legs, powerful front haunches, sort of a big kind of rhinoceros-like figure, sort of that sort of like build, powerful shoulders, and a big crest of bristles along the back, extending from sort of the middle of the back, almost down to the tail, up over the shoulders and to the stumpy head with its snout and its massive tusks. Let's give it a shot. This wereboar recovers from its daze and turns toward us. I don't know if Igor necessarily like starts out toward it, but Illyria sort of puts a hand back toward Igor and says, wait, let me just see if it's possible. Igor, you can see Illyria sort of hunches over in an odd way. Illyria typically walks pretty tall, but right now hunches over, and you can see some of the sort of like hair on the back of Illyria's neck stands up. A strong hit. Illyria dodges left, dodges right, it takes the piece of spearhead and leaping toward this wereboar, you can see there's a moment where it flashes, this blade flashes in the moonlight. The massive wereboar that is the Mohawk dwarf roars and rushes into the woods, but Illyria spins the blade at the last moment and instead just catches fistfuls of this bristly ridge on the back of this wereboar. And I'll just say this, I've got a handhold, and that is all I've got. We shall see if if we are able to sort of steer these things, but this boar goes absolutely mad. Starts bucking up and down, Illyria shouts, "I don't think I'd recommend it!" Igor, are you going to try and ride this Wereboar and see if we can sort of use these as a speed boost to get up to the castle? Is that the tack you want to take, or you want to try something different? While you are doing that, I mean, I got a strong hit, so I think I'm going to make another move now. Yeah, and add +1. Okay, fantastic. So, I'm gonna add my dice to this. I think this is going to be edge. This is gonna be edge to try and get up on it. Okay, come on, come on. I got a +1 and a +2. Yes, that is a strong hit. The dice are in my favor. Illyria, not so much riding this thing as simply jumping from side to side over its back and kicking off of trees with massive amounts of force. Basically everything Illyria's got in them. Kicking off of these tree trunks and just trying to guide this boar, just get it pointed in the right direction toward the castle, and manages to do so. And this boar takes off toward the castle, up toward the parade grounds. I think Illyria and Igor both see the hunters. We know them to be hunters. They are sort of school hunters, led by the guy with the tooth-studded sort of cowboy hat, as it were. It's more of a big, like, wide, like, basically, it is it is like a big old outback hat, a big old Australian outback hat. They sort of like tense a bit, and you can see they sort of get into a slightly more defensive position. None of them move, none of them go for weapons, but they all sort of like, you can see them instinctively crouch a little bit. Meanwhile, Igor, seeing this, is going to try and do the same. All right, Igor, good luck to you. Oh no, Igor. Igor, oh no. Igor, this is bad news. Igor, you step forward. You put your hands out. You saw what Illyria did. You saw grab onto these bristles up on the ridge of the back. Okay, all right. Igor, you leap forward, and you grab for the bristles here, and for whatever reason, your grip does not hold. Your hands are sort of slipping and sliding. You cannot manage a full grip on them. Seemingly like part of your ghostly form, you have not fully reformed from the mist, and the dice are not in your favor. Not your fault, Marinver. Not your fault. The dice simply came up a 4 and a 10, and then your action was a 2. So I'm very sorry. You leap forward, trying to grab onto it, and your ghastly hands just pass sort of over the ridge here, and you stumble forward. You knock against this Wereboar, and it sort of tumbles off, sort of wondering what on earth just touched it in the darkness here. It is not a big fan, and now you are in some danger. You are going to, certainly, I think you're going to endure some stress here. This knocks your spirit down to 4 from 5, and you are surrounded now. You are sort of running from tree to tree, trying to evade this crush, this herd of rampaging Wereboars. These boar separate you from Illyria. You find yourself crashing through the underbrush, simply trying to get away. Igor has panicked a little bit. You flee down toward just a spot where you think you might be able to sort of hide in a bit of a ravine. There are some larger rocks, some bigger trees, more closely grown foliage. You think if you can just sort of jump over the right logs, it might give you just a bit of defense from behind. And in doing so, when you come back to your senses, you find yourself in a darker part of the forest. The moon doesn't penetrate this place like it does elsewhere in the forest. As you charge forward, you can still hear these wereboar tearing up the undergrowth behind you. They're still in pursuit, but you manage to leap over, and you find yourself, instead of your feet hitting the soft mud that's sort of been cooled off and hydrated by the recent snow and melting nearby, you find yourself with your feet hitting stone. It's dirty, it's grimy, and as you sort of jump into a little bit of a ravine, almost a bit of a ditch here, your feet hit this stone, and you find that it is not just a stone, it is paving stone. And in front of you, you see a small staircase. From up above, it seems like one of these boar may have tried to jump over the ravine. It fails to do so and gets caught on some branches, crashes down, breaking an entire tree trunk on its way down, and sort of lands just around a corner. You yourself look around this corner, and you can see this boar is coming to underneath an archway. Now, I've rolled some wits for you, and looking at this archway, Igor, you see sort of the angle of it, and you can see just a bit down this tunnel. It is pitch black, no light whatsoever. But it is in the direction of the castle. This wereboar that has crashed down in front of the arch, it sort of gets up, shakes its head around, trying to recover from the daze, and it looks around sort of confusedly. This dark, overgrown arch sort of disappears into the hillside. There is a small staircase leading up to it, a small stone sort of sculpture or shrine of some sort that Igor is currently hiding behind just outside of it. And down this tunnel, you can see pitch black, but it's pitch black that leads toward the castle. Underneath, it seems, the parade grounds. Igor, you've got a choice to make. You feel pretty confident that this tunnel is indeed going to lead you back toward the castle. It's, of course, got this boar in front of it, but, well, that's the decision you gotta make. This boar sort of like testing the waters, it seems, looks down into this dark tunnel, and then appears to just sort of get angry about it, and starts to take a run at the sort of the stones that make up the walls of this tunnel, and sort of charges at the left side of the arch and just crashes into it. Once again, sort of in a daze. It has done absolutely nothing to damage this archway. But it has done something to sort of damage its own ego, and it turns and takes a run at this little stone shrine that you are currently hidden behind. You rolled a hit with a twist, a strong hit with a twist, Igor, on that last check, so you feel very, very confident this tunnel is going to lead you to the castle. This one, a 6 against a 7 and an 8. Let's see. This is going to be with, fortunately, it's with your shadow. So 6, 7, 8, 9 is enough to get you past this boar. Crunch. You hear kind of a pained, like, from this wereboar. This is certainly not one of the biggest ones that you've seen. Still intimidating from up close, but it sort of, you can see one of its tusks actually sort of like crooks off to one side now, but this just seems to infuriate the Wereboar, and it starts to just sort of stand there and beat its head against this stone sculpture, it making an awful lot of noise. But that gives you plenty of cover to slowly creep around. You pass this Wereboar, again, one of the smaller ones, still the size of like a Honda motorcycle. Back behind you, you leave this Wereboar crashing against this stone shrine, and you disappear into the darkness of the tunnels in front of you. Igor, you make your way through this tunnel, which quickly becomes tunnels. The way in front of you is not clear, but you, for some reason, have a strong sense of direction. You can feel not a smell of the castle. You certainly can't see. There's no moonlight in here to help you out, even in your ghostly form. But you can feel the castle. It is maybe the most isolated you've been since becoming a ghost, with the exception of the time that you spent simply wisping around being nothing before you appeared in the forest to Illyria. In that silence, in that purity of solitude, you feel your essence, and you can feel the essence of the castle ahead of you. These tunnels, you can sense it. Not because you've got some sort of echolocation, but because these tunnels are full. They are full of spirit. These tunnels have a soul or souls in them. You can feel them wandering around you, and as you reach out and sort of touch the walls, you find yourself able to touch these walls as you have been to many walls before, but unlike some of the walls that you've, experienced, unlike putting your hand on a tree or something, these walls down here, even more so than the castle up above, they are soggy, wet with essence. This place is deeply haunted. You hear the scrape of stone against stone, and you pass a fork in the road. It would offer you two directions to go, except in one direction, as you approach, you find a ghost. This ghost, unlike the ones that you sort of feel in the walls, these ghosts that you know have long ago stepped back into their dark caves and forgotten their way into the material world. This ghost you can see. And this scrape of stone against stone is as this ghost mason bricks up one of the paths here in these tunnels. It's got a little wooden trowel and takes bricks and puts them up. This wall is at about waist height, and the ghost is over on the other side of it, either bricking himself into this tunnel or bricking you out of this tunnel, leaving you with only one direction to go. Igor makes his way toward this ghost, trying to see, is there a chance that it could be friendly? As you approach, the ghost catches sight of you, and its face turns into a hollow, silent scream. You don't hear it as much as you feel its essence, just and in a rush, you can see this stonemason stares at you with wide, dead eyes, grabbing these bricks in a flurry of movement, slamming them down onto this wall, closing you in away from it. Certainly not friendly. And you hear a Igor. The stones slam down, and this tunnel entrance is sealed. The ghost behind it, you can hear the grinding of stone on stone moving further and further away into the tunnels. The mason makes his way off to close up some other part of this labyrinth underneath the grounds of the castle. You're just about to continue away from this ghastly moment when, once again, you don't see it, you feel it. It's that sensation you had before, when you were inside the suit of armor that attacked us when we first entered the castle. This is your second encounter with this entity, and the first time, you didn't know what to expect. But you've had a day here in this castle, and you've encountered other animated suits of armor. You know that these suits of armor that you've encountered, every other one of them, has been inexorably tied to the armor itself. These, even when they are sort of knocked apart, even when they are attacked or pushed aside, because you've seen these suits of armor in the castle, their habit seems to be to look for a weapon, just anything, a broken chair, a torch off the wall, anything they can find, and then just attack the closest person to it. And so over the past day, you have regularly seen like groups of upperclassmen or the Beaks they will see one of these suits of armor go from sort of wandering mode to attack mode. You've seen upperclassmen and students suddenly attack these suits of armor. As this suit of armor finds a weapon, they will remove the weapon from it. Often they will sort of kick it apart, especially if it seems like some bored upperclassmen, and then just leave it in pieces, where over time it will slowly come back together. This suit of armor that you fought before was different. When you went into that suit of armor and encountered the entity, you got this strong sense of a shape looking at you in a forest. I want you all to imagine you are standing in a forest, and nearby somewhere you see a cave, and then you see a person move in that cave. You can't see any of the details about them. You simply see that they are watching you, and you feel that entity again now. It's here in this dark place, somewhere here in the tunnels, that same entity. Meanwhile, back up in other parts of the forest, Illyria is riding the back of a wereboar, charging through the forest. Illyria manages to just crest the edge of the parade grounds, crashing out onto the parade grounds here, out of the forest, and these hunters, these school hunters, step back. Bella, the man with the tooth-studded hat, the halfling, The tall elf and their companions, they step back and away, but seem to be poised and ready. Illyria is going to hold on for dear life, not knowing that they've been separated necessarily from Igor. Let's see if Illyria can sort of perceive this. Illyria looks around and knows that Igor is not nearby, but simply does not have sort of the control here to do anything about it. And as such, Igor is totally missing. Illyria has absolutely no idea. Okay. I'm going to take +1 momentum here, and I am going to try and make this last-ditch effort to charge up toward the castle. These hooves charge forward, and, well... The Wereboar simply decides to crash. Illyria has been steering it so far. They're on a good trajectory, a good angle up toward the castle. Charging across the parade grounds in a straight line toward Scullaport Tower. We go into a rolling dive as this Wereboar simply chooses to shove its tusks, its snout down into the earth and tumble over itself, rolling on its back. And as this enormous creature rolls over Illyria, there is a crunch, and once again Illyria finds themselves in a lot of pain. A rib is probably in bad shape. There is a real hard time breathing. Illyria is just sort of on the ground as this boar starts to get up, and it stomps the ground with a hoof. It's angry. It's looking around for whatever dragged it up here, and it spots Illyria. Illyria. No, it's all right. Just, I don't want to hurt you, and I don't want to be hurt. Just leave. Go. Hey, get away. This Wereboar bears down on Illyria, rears up with its tusks pointed down toward Illyria just to slam into Illyria, and as Illyria just puts up an arm, knowing this has got to be it, we hear, "Oh, no," and Bella, this massive orc woman, grabs onto this boar by the tusks and just deadlifts it up into the air. Its back feet are still on the ground, but its front half is just pushed up in the air. It sort of waves its stumpy paws toward Bella, but Bella is just pushing it up, and the two of them are locked in this sort of this A-frame shape, pushing back and forth as Bella stands over Illyria and says, Go toward the castle!" And Illyria doesn't need more telling. Illyria is going to charge away. The rest of these folks seem to just sort of stand watching Bella do what she's doing here as she just wrestles with a Wereboar. She is enormous. She's tall and she's absolutely yoked. She's still not as big, not quite as big as this Wereboar. Illyria can hear Bella squealing and squeaking, much in the same way that we've heard these Wereboar squealing and squeaking all night. There's absolutely no way for Illyria to decipher it, but we hear Bella clearly has a strong sense of interacting with these things. And not only that, but we hear the big one, that deep voice from the Mohawk dwarf lycan somewhere off in the forest responding to Bella. There's a lot going on here that Illyria simply doesn't understand, and right now doesn't especially desire to. With a weak hit, Illyria limps up toward the castle. Approaching Tower Scullaport and slowly summiting the pile of rubble here at the tower. This is the only way Illyria knows how to get in. Illyria unfortunately knows what awaits on the other side of this tower, and it's a massive hall of traps. Are they going to be able to make it through unscathed? We shall have to find out. Illyria creeps up and is going to attempt to make their way into this tower. Limping, absolutely cold from stumbling around and being tossed into the snow. Illyria climbs the rubble into the tower. There is that one unassuming door. It's closed, but as Illyria approaches it, it seems that it has been left just ever so slightly ajar. Not locked. Illyria is going to proceed inside. And here, the large double doors into that large sort of, it almost looked like a greenhouse. These doors are shut, and when Illyria tries them, knowing what lies down the hallway, Illyria tries these doors, they are locked. The hallway is the only option. Illyria takes a tentative step forward, and immediately the walls open up and a hail of darts they rush toward Illyria, and Illyria is hit. Their vision goes into a daze, and the last thing Illyria sees before going fully unconscious is that upper-class student with the afro in the hat. I did tell you not to go out there, didn't I? Let's get you to bed. And Illyria fully passes out as this upper-class student simply grabs Illyria's considerable form and tosses them over his shoulder. That's the last thing Illyria remembers. Meanwhile, below the castle, hello, Igor. How are you feeling today? Igor, you don't see a shape to avoid or sneak around. You simply have this picture in your mind. In the same way that you have felt yourself at the mouth of this cave that represents your connection to the material world. If you forget yourself, if you let yourself drift back into this cave, you might forget the way out again. It constantly, you see the edges of this cave, the mouth of this cave at your peripheral vision, and you look out from this cave into the material world. And as long as you stay here at the mouth of the cave, you can interact with the material world. But in the same way that you don't see that, you feel it in that exact same way. You feel on that same plane of the cross between nothingness and somethingness, you feel another cave. You have a sense that this cave is darker, deeper, so much deeper than yours, and absolutely filled with this ancient entity. And yet you can see in this vision, you can sense this shape just watching you from the mouth of its cave. Your physical self is down here in these dungeons. It is nearly pitch black. You've just had this ghost mason block up this wall, just walled off a section of the tunnel and move along, and now you find yourself alone in the material world, and yet not alone. Igor. How are you feeling today?
I could be better.
Separated from your friend. And having a hard time making more.
The forest feels safer to me.
Igor, you're not sure if you said that part out loud or if you just thought it. And yet, this entity responds. Yes. The forest keeps you distracted. Distracted from the swallow of your cave. That mouth could eat you up at any moment.
Are you a teacher?
There's a long silence, Igor. Are you a student? Certainly you sleep in their castle. You listen to their words, but are you a student? What do you want to learn? In your mind's eye, you see this entity. It takes a step forward out of its cave and very slowly begins to make its way toward you.
For one, I'd like to know how to get out of here safely.
Safely. Do you feel safe? it continues to slowly make its way toward you. Not in the physical world, not in this tunnel, just in this sense of the ghastly that you have. Your own very rough understanding of your relationship to your ghostly form.
How do you know all of this?
I know only what you know. Nothing else matters. In the material world, Igor continues through these tunnels. There is the barest amount of light, and every so often you get just a flicker of torchlight. And looking up into the ceiling, you can see where bits of masonry have broken away, where the occasional ancient wooden timber has rotted or cracked to one side. You can see up into rooms of the castle. The ceilings are relatively high here. There's no way for you to reach up toward them. But you know you are getting close. That's in the physical world. In this place with the cave. This entity continues to advance toward you. Igor. Igor, what do you hope for, Igor? The way that this entity says your name is disquieting. And it's saying it more and more as the conversation goes on. You are advancing down these tunnels. You know you are getting closer and closer to the castle. You know surely at some point soon, it should spit you out into the castle somewhere. But at the mouth of your ghastly cave, this entity approaches. It's getting quite a bit nearer now, and the terrible thing is that the closer it gets, the more shadow seems to block your vision. And so, in spite of the fact that in your ghastly cave it seems mere yards away from you, mere meters away, it is a shadow on a backdrop of darkness. You only have a sense of where its body is as it advances toward you, where its head is as it leans from side to side looking at you, and where its eyes are as they never divert from looking at you.
I want to be safe, to be comfortable. What else would someone want?
A great many things they want. Dear diary. And in the darkness here, you are going to endure stress. Let's see. You're going to suffer minus spirit equal to your foe's rank. Okay. I mean, that's going to be considerable, my friends. You are going to get knocked down to 1 spirit. Now you're going to roll plus spirit or plus heart, whichever one's higher. You are at a 1 right now. On a weak hit, you press on. As this entity stands before you, you take a step back into your dark cave, into the mouth of this cave, and you feel yourself being pushed further in. Not by force, simply by fear. Fear of this entity. And as it steps forward toward you, you are getting lost. You're getting confused in the distinction between the material world where you are wandering through this tunnel and the world of your ghastly cave, where it's not a real place, simply the way that you feel yourself manifesting. In the clash of these two places, as they blur across your vision, you don't know which one you are seeing. You aren't even sure in the moment which one is the material world and which one is the world of your imagination. And then you stumble. And you fall. And when you fall onto the floor of a storeroom. It is long overgrown with cobwebs, and there is a desk in a corner covered in papers, these papers themselves covered in cobwebs and dust. This seems like a very, very old room, a place that does not get a lot of traffic. You can see, however, along the walls, there are massive amounts of ingredients. Ingredients, tools, all sorts of things. It seems like this might be sort of a storeroom of the castle, and as this laugh reverberates, you fall to the ground and you can see a door in front of you, and underneath that door, there's torchlight. Just calm, peaceful, normal torchlight. The most sort of real light you've seen in hours at this point. Igor, you look back and you find that you have fallen through, seemingly inadvertently, sort of passing into your ghastly form. You've fallen through what certainly used to be a door, but has been the door is so rusted you don't think the hinges could possibly move anymore. The door is crushed over with a section of the ceiling that is caved in. And not only that, but this whole area is absolutely piled up with mops and brooms and cleaning supplies. And you feel yourself focused once more. Once again, present in the material world. Igor looks around, takes a deep breath, and discovers that, well, there are indeed some things in here that could well be useful. Interesting. Some supplies that might work for alchemy. It's been a while since you've had access to real supplies, and as you're looking around, you see not only supplies, but good ones. Lots of them. There's so much junk in here. You find what appears to be like a canvas bag. Kind of a nice one, in fact. Certainly nicer than the burlap sack that you and Illyria were carrying their stuff around in before. And I'm going to give you 2 supply. Sandra says, making a mental note of that, this is now our secret way out of the castle. Hey, Sandra, absolutely. This is definitely something where you get a sense that unless people have either been familiar with this castle for a long time or done a lot of exploring, it's not quite this sort of thing where you're sure you're the only one who knows about it. But certainly, unless someone has come in here and that person has either unburied that wall and then reburied it, or they're a ghost, like an especially curious ghost, yeah, you were probably like, it is very unlikely other people have found this over time. You get a sense that if you were to come back to this room, there's a lot in here that could be really handy for alchemy. But you have only taken things so far that you know how to use. You think with a little bit more education, it'll go from like, yeah, I know what to do with like 5% of these things to I know what to do with a lot more of it. So you're looking around here and you know like, oh, this place is the real deal. And I think if you, I think as you look around, your sense that this room is the real deal also sort of contributes to an overall sense that this castle is kind of the real deal. You're looking around at a very well-stocked, rivaling like places that you've stolen from in the past back in your gate town near the towers. It rivals the best alchemy shops that you've ever been in for ingredients. Again, you don't know what to do with most of it, but I think it gets you excited to learn what to do with more of it. You're looking around. I think as you pass away from the shelves, you move toward the door, which is right next to this desk here in the corner. You get a sense that perhaps someone used this as an office temporarily. It must have been quite some time ago. And yet, in the midst of all the dust on this desk, you see a small piece of parchment, just a little roll of parchment, that is not covered in dust. This is relatively fresh. This has been here not nearly as long as the rest of it. All the old, baubles and broken pieces of equipment that might have been mended long ago when this was used as an office. Now it's just a storeroom, but this piece of parchment is new. And when you pick it up to read it, Igor, it says, "Dear Diary, it is a terrible thing to find myself between the Academy and the house. The Academy is my home. My crimes are forgiven. I may yet be redeemed. But the fangs of the house sink deep. They will not be resisted or ignored. I fear that I must give them what they ask. I will be that which they have so long desired. Their eyes and their ears inside the castle. I don't know their plans, and I shall never ask. I can only hope they do not desire to tear down what is built here." Igor, this scrap of diary just sitting on this desk. There are some curious things in here, one of which, most especially, is that the word house is capitalized. It's a terrible thing to find myself between the Academy and the house being capitalized. So, as you make your way into the school, trying to sort out if someone found out anything about Illyria. Fantastic. All right, you leave this little storeroom here, filing it away into your memory, and head back into the castle. Igor's looking around for Illyria. You pass into the lower corridors of the castle here, not the dungeons underneath, but the lower corridors, which are above the dungeons. You come across Penelia, and Penelia has no idea where Illyria might be. However, you come across this pack of, you surmise, very likely lycan. This pack, including this girl with the piercings on the left side of her face, the one who seems to be sort of the leader of this little group. She wears a leather jacket, and when you approach, she sort of like grins at you, but it's halfway between a smile and simply baring her teeth. She is, as per usual, followed around by this crew of other lycan. You can see definitely not ghosts. Not a single one of them in this little gang are ghosts. And you surmise that probably none of them are vampires either. You don't see you see lots of people who sort of like smile in that same way, halfway to baring their teeth, and none of them have the telltale fangs of a vampire.
You looking for Illyria? Has she had her change yet? No? Keep looking. I hear they've passed out again. It's a shame not being able to explore things on your own. It's, well, good luck to them, that's what I say. They're back in bed.
You hear some of the others call her Chu. And I'll put it in chat, CHIU. But one of the others sort of like steps forward, and you notice as you approach, like, anytime someone sort of moves toward this group, they sort of form up. It's halfway between genuinely intimidating and just sort of a little silly. But one of them whispers,
Hey, Chu. You think this ghost has anything interesting in that bag there?
Maybe. But, I think for right now, let's leave him be. Don't want to step on any toes. Especially because you're close to something important.
they laugh and start to wander off. As you look back at them in the corridors here, you can see them sort of passing from person to person, and each time they do, they sort of form up again. They're like they're this pack that sort of patrols the halls, it seems. Not in any formal capacity, certainly. Igor, you return to the bunk rooms. It's over on the the east wing of the castle, and even that is the sort of easternmost part of the main castle itself. And you find Illyria once again in bed, awake but certainly hurting. And I think you yourself find yourself pretty roughed up as well. I think the two of us, we can go out and get a bit of privacy on a balcony that looks out over the valley, and indeed down below we can see the lights, however faint, of the town of Dawngreet. Now the two of us are, like I said, we're roughed up, but we're going to have a chance to do something called Sojourn here. Igor sort of presents this satchel, this new canvas satchel full of supplies. Illyria says, "Where did you find all these? This is good. This is great. Shadowroot, good. Some Nightsbane. This is going to be helpful. Where did you find all these?" And they are going to busy themselves trying to put together some remedy here. So we are going to Sojourn. Igor, you are officially you've got +2 and +2, and I'm going to say that for this you go ahead and you've got +2 to both. I'm going to say that's the twist there. You get a full success on both of them. Okay. Meanwhile, Illyria is also going to roll +heart. It's a weak hit. It's a weak hit. Okay. Igor, between the supplies that you were able to give to Illyria and some help from some of the staff here, a beak or two does walk in and offers a little bit. There is a vampire, and he sort of wanders past the door, and upon seeing the two of us here, he, without saying anything, simply raises a hand and performs some gestures here while whispering under his breath, and then we're able to get some additional healing from that. It seems to be especially effective for you, Igor, because as a ghost, Illyria is really struggling to figure out how to help Igor out. But the two of us are well rested now. We've got some supply, and now it's a matter of going to bed. The sun is starting to rise, and it seems that is when the castle goes to sleep. Of course, for ghosts, this seems to make a decent bit of sense for you now. The sunlight just feels bad to you. It feels like you're being dissolved almost, like sugar into water. It feels like sunlight is the water in that equation. And so it's not a comfortable feeling. You're still present, but it sort of dissolves your corporeal form, and you have a harder time sort of interacting with the real world with the light. For vampires, we've heard the stories, of course. We haven't seen anyone encounter this, but we know we've got vampires all around us. This, I think, is our first time sleeping here in the castle. I think this is our first time like fully just getting a night's rest here. And the two of us bed down. I think we've got bunks that are close enough together that we can sort of whisper back and forth. And I think as the sun is rising, we're still getting used to this routine, I think. And Illyria is not feeling great about going to sleep here, but the windows have been boarded over. The draft that comes in actually keeps the room kind of pleasantly cool because there are a lot of bodies packed in here, and that brings up a lot of heat. And between the two of them, it's actually kind of comfortable. In fact, the student with the gold eyes and the gold armband sort of like looking around, doesn't see anybody else doing it, and so goes to stoke a fire, builds a little fire in the hearth. And it is a pretty comfortable room as the sun begins to rise and students begin to go to bed. Illyria whispers over to Igor.
We're surrounded by ghosts, sorry. Wereboars, werewolves, I'm sure, vampires. I don't know if I should be terrified or comforted. How do you feel? And where did you find those all these supplies? This is fantastic. Are you going to try and find some place to brew some alchemy?
Illyria stares at the ceiling.
I never did find a spear shaft. I just need a stick. A sapling would be great, but a broom handle even. It's all right. I didn't lose it. I was close, but I didn't lose it. It's a crazy, crazy time.
I think the two of us start to drift off, and unless our boy Igor has something else to say, then I think we're going to make our way into the next day. But y'all let me know. I'm going to take for a break. I'm going to take a small break just for a second here. I'm not going to leave. I'm just going to sort of hang out for just a mo. Because we're about to go into our next day, and that means classes. I hope y'all are excited. It is, of course, not day, but night, but there we go. Basically, we have rested and healed up considerably. Illyria, not quite at full spirit, but we are playing a system called Ironsworn, in which we've got a few different trackers, but Igor is at full health, full spirit, and pretty low favor, but that's okay. Illyria, I am at almost full health. I am at full spirit and also pretty low favor, but again, we should be okay. And I think we can probably use favor much in the same way that we would use supply, at least while we are in the castle here. And so maybe we'll discuss that sort of stuff coming up. I just came to find some entertainment while working on a 5e supplement, so this might be great. Fantastic, Nerdy Vampire. I'm glad to hear it. I've played quite a bit of 5e. As a matter of fact, I'm in a Saturday campaign, and I have been. It's a weekly campaign I've been in for years at this point. Boy, almost 5 years. Wow. I did 3 of that in a different system, but the past 2 years have been in D&D. Yeah, good to have you, Nerdy Vampire. Meanwhile, if you do jump over into the Discord, I would be happy to hear what you're talking about, what sort of thing you're working on in 5e. We've got a general RPG chat, and I would love to see what you're working on over there, if you wish. Marin Vera says, I'm going to be just listening for a while I drive. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Everybody, let's jump back in. As the sun rises, the curtains are drawn tight over the boarded up windows in this old, burned out carcass of a castle. The ruins, in spite of being absolutely ruinous, they feel comfortable. We've been sleeping underneath wagons and inside abandoned, drafty tents for so long that, well, Igor, I don't know how long it's been since you last had a night's sleep in a real bed back in your hometown, that gate town just on the edge of the Rositas Towers. For Illyria, I know certainly it's been months, almost a year now. I think Illyria thinks that they've probably been sojourning for almost a year. And this is one of the first times, they realize, since those very early days, when Illyria thought that they could, make it and earn a little money enough to travel into a tavern and get a room there each night. Maybe for a couple of weeks, but before the month was out, Illyria didn't have the money for that anymore and was roughing it entirely. This ruin, with its boards and its little fire in the hearth, is absolutely luxurious to us. It's really fantastic to have a place to call home, and although the two of us are a little anxious, surrounded as we are by vampires, werewolves, other ghosts, as anxious as that might make us, indeed, we find ourselves here, sleeping well as the sun rises. We sleep through the day, and as the sun begins to set, that is when we find that the castle is coming back alive. We're still not quite used to this schedule yet, but we're getting there. It's been some late nights for us already before we ever arrived at the castle, and now we find ourselves immersed in this schedule. The energy of the people around us starts to carry us through some of these late nights. And it's starting to feel a bit more like a normal day, even though it's dark out. Igor, you find that the moonlight that continues to illuminate the castle, after you've spent a couple of nights awake and a few days asleep, you find that this light does about as much for you as sunlight ever did. It feels cool against your skin, unlike the heat that you remember, but you are starting to forget of the sunlight on your skin, but the coolness is comforting. Meanwhile, Illyria is sniffing before their eyes even open, and sitting up, Illyria says,
I think it's breakfast time. Don't ask me how I know.
And then just sort of like wrinkles their nose up at you and smiles.
Come on, I'm curious to see how this all works.
We follow the current of students that are leaving, and we make our way out into the halls of the castle. We find our way into a large open kitchen. It seems that at one point this was simply the castle kitchens that served the castle, whatever this building used to be, whatever this structure used to defend. But now it has been sort of retrofitted. Walls have been knocked out between this and storerooms, and now massive sort of just like rough wooden tables, big circular wooden tables are dotted all over the place in this space. And indeed, some students take their breakfast here and others grab it and then depart. Many of the upper class students seem to grab some food and then head off in different directions. Now, one group that you notice is not partaking here are ghosts. We start to wander in here. Igor says,
What do you think ghosts have for breakfast? Memories?
Illyria laughs a little bit.
I have no idea. I can tell you what I could go for right now. Not a thing that's green. Frankly, I want to run out into the forest and hunt for something. I don't know why. The smell in here, it's powerful, but I just want to...
And I think you can see Illyria is like grinding their teeth a little bit.
I just want to grab something, get it between my teeth. I'm famished. I don't even think I would need to cook it. I could just eat it raw. I feel like maybe we could eat the essence of living things like plants. Maybe you should follow your instincts.
Illyria sort of like raises their eyebrows and looks around here. But here we find Terua. Terua is the upperclasser, the ghost. She is a pretty studious individual and was able to help you out a lot yesterday in terms of getting you directed to the places where you are going to be attending your classes. Now, Terua is sort of standing here, and as some of the ghosts come in, you see her sort of take Pinelli aside and then direct her down a hallway. And when she sees you, she waves you down as well. She's sort of catching all the ghosts as they come into this room. Meanwhile, I think Chu approaches with her posse here, and seeing Illyria up and about, says,
Hello there. Good to see you on your feet. Smells nice in here, doesn't it? Gives you, I don't know, gives you a bit of a rush, I guess.
And she just sort of like watches Illyria as Illyria's nose twitches again. And you see, Igor, this smile come across Illyria's face. But it's a smile that also looks a bit like they're baring their teeth. It's the same smile you saw on Chu yesterday when you were looking for Illyria.
Yeah, I suppose I'm hungry. Listen, are we going to have some problems here? I just want to get my breakfast and eat quietly. You seem to enjoy following me around. What is it you want? I don't want anything. It's just... it's an exciting time in your life. Alright? You don't need to worry about me. I just like to see you come into the fold, as it were. Come into the fold? You think that's my plan? I can't say I terribly like the group that you've amassed for yourself here. I don't like the posture you take. I feel blocked in. I don't like feeling blocked in.
Chu raises her lip and a tiny little growl escapes. At the same time, hearing this, a lot of the others in this crew with their leather jackets start to sort of step in front of Chu, and Illyria starts to back away a little bit, but Chu immediately sort of says,
No! No! No. We're gonna wait. Illyria, you're gonna realise soon enough you're gonna need some help. Nobody makes it alone here. You can try, if you want. But you're gonna wake up every morning feeling like this. Every night you're gonna go to bed feeling like this. And sooner or later, this is gonna get you into trouble. I hope you've picked someone to help you out of trouble. I hope it's me. We could teach you a lot.
but Chu steps aside and gestures for Illyria to proceed. Illyria steps through and heads up toward a long counter. It is basically this big butcher's block counter, meters and meters long, and at this counter there is a vampire. The fangs are pronounced, but this vampire is working with a flourish, almost like a dancer. spinning an enormous cleaver around one finger, with a panache that you might expect from the movie Ratatouille, and upon this board is laid a feast. Now, it's not a feast that I think necessarily the two of us would be particularly interested in normally. Igor certainly does not consider it appetizing, but Illyria, looking down at this spread, it's inspiring almost. It is laid with chops and steaks and just an enormous quantity of meat. Some of it is seared a little bit. Some of it has been sort of lightly seared. It is sort of a blue rare, and yet Illyria's feeling pretty good about this. Over to one side, there are also some assistants who are working, sort of sous chefs, I suppose you can imagine. But other cooks here are chopping up vegetables and lots of roots. We can see that there are some students here who look real banged up, really banged up, and these individuals sort of make their way toward this spread here, sort of timidly, like looking around a little bit embarrassed. And I think we notice some tusks, some lower jaw tusks. The dwarf from last night actually sort of herds them over toward where some of these root vegetables are being chopped up here, and says,
"Hey, these tubers are going to be exactly what you need to feel better today. All right? I want you all to buck up, all right? Last night was a rough night. It's always a rough night in the first one. Okay? We've had our little hunt, and now we're going to come together. Today, you are going to learn a lot more about why you change, how you change, what you're going to need to do to take care of yourself after you change. But last night was just a test run. All right? Nobody got hurt? Nobody got hurt too bad." And he pats the shoulder of an elf girl who has a massive bruise on her jaw and is missing a tooth down there. "It's gonna grow back, promise." He smacks her on the shoulder again, and he sort of like guides this little group over toward the chopped up root vegetables. Meanwhile, Illyria has just like grabbed a big, nearly raw piece of meat here. Not quite ready to take the plunge on fully raw meat, but just grabs it and tears into it. Once again, Chu is sort of watching from the corner. She and her gang have got some chops here, and they have taken a table nearby this spread, just watching the people who approach. But Chu is certainly keeping an eye on Illyria. Meanwhile, Illyria, sort of distracted by this, has fully sort of dived into breakfast here. None of the ghosts are partaking, and Tarua is taking them aside and sending them down a hallway. Tarua says to you,
"Yes, I think you're one of the last ones. Igor, you may notice, you don't feel particularly hungry, I take it?"
She actually looks at you a little worried for a second, but when you indicate that you don't in fact feel hungry,
she says, "Okay, lovely. There are some ghosts who do feel a great hunger when they pass, and they have a hard way in front of them, but for right now, we're going to go off into another part of the castle. I am going to guide you in there and then introduce you to another beak. This is an important time for you."
And the two of you start to walk down this hall together. Tarua starts to explain.
"You are becoming accustomed to being a ghost, and speaking for myself, I can say that the experience is not one that is... It doesn't come naturally. You may have noticed. This is a difficult time for you. I'm sure you feel the draw to disappear, to forget yourself. It's important that you don't. Unfortunately, even if you do forget yourself, even if you do disappear down that dark cave, some have described it, others call it a whirlpool, some call it a dark storm, But however it is that you feel that emptiness, that chasm, letting yourself disappear into it is not the same as passing on. It's worse than that. You remain here. Your spirit does not pass into a new place, but instead you will find yourself trapped. You won't remember what it is you need to do.
As you approach this door that she's leading you to, you have just watched Penelli pass through the door and is now on the inside, and Tarua sort of stops outside this door and gestures you inside, not bothering to open the door because you probably don't need to bother to to open it. Igor says,
That sounds frightening.
Tarua smiles and says,
And that is why, during this time, when other students may be enjoying food, you don't need to right now. Instead, we're going to focus on your spirit. Your body does not need the sustenance, but your spirit is going to need some help. Please go inside.
And Igor, as you pass in through the door, you find yourself in a room full of ghosts. Absolutely chock full of ghosts. You see over to one side, there appear to be some of the sort of the youngest of them. And at the same time, it's a little hard to tell because, of course, people become ghosts at different ages. However, you can see that there are some sort of groups here. You see some students sort of like looking around, just sort of standing there, unsure what to do. Penelli is among them, and I think you probably head on over there. On the other side of the room, you can see that there are some students who appear much more at ease. Many of them are sitting on the ground. Some of them sort of take up positions that are sort of reminiscent to meditation. And here in this room, you look forward, and you see two things that are sort of united into one. Along the back wall, a massive pipe organ sort of sprouts from the wall. It is a psychotic instrument, truly a real mess of tubes and pipes. These sort of, they jut out of the wall and sometimes back into it at different angles. All of the sort of tops of these organs are jutting out in different ways. There are dents and bends all over it. Some of the pipes are indeed all kinked up and sort of bent down to one side. The other thing that you see is a wall of tubes and beakers and little burners, tiny fires, little cauldrons and pots and mortars and pestles. A wall of this, and when I say the two are one, it's because you see that some of the sort of copper-looking pipes that might go from one of these beakers will pass into one of the tubes of the pipe organ and then come out the other side. And some of these pipe organs will sort of, they will be collected around the base of one of these cauldrons underneath, almost like a burner. The whole thing is a dazzling bit of, you don't know whether it's artifice or simply just a big old weird contraption. You can't imagine it possibly works in any significant way. And yet here you are. Hello, everyone. The music begins in earnest and with a crash. The pipe organ suddenly blares up, and at the same time, these bits of pipe and wires and all of these sort of this alchemical stuff starts to fire up underneath the cauldrons and beakers. This entire wall, as a matter of fact, it's two walls of this rather large room, suddenly come alive. And the pipe organ starts to play a fierce sort of Pirates of the Caribbean sort of tune alongside the alchemical equipment, which bubbles and pops and hisses as it comes alive. And As this organ plays, you hear within the sound of this organ this voice.
Hello, students, and welcome. It is now the time for your education in remaining.
You feel the presence of a ghost. This ghost doesn't seem to maintain a strong sense of physical form, but you get an occasional glimpse in the material world of a dancer. They spin and twirl with balletic grace around this room as the lower class students jump with the sound of the sudden pipe organ blaring into this room, and the upper class students seem to sort of relax. Some of them even just tilt their head up and begin to take in the music.
You are all dead, my dearest nearly departed. My condolences to you.
And as this dancing figure pirouettes right in front of you, suddenly appearing in your view, Igor, and then disappearing once again, you and Penelli both gasp for a moment. And this ghost, she smiles at you. A big, winning smile. She is rather lovely, frankly. She is on the shorter side. She has got curly hair that is currently tied up behind her head. But as she dances around, she smiles and comes to a rest, only momentarily becoming visible here in front of the pipe organ, and then taking a bit of a bow and simply dissolving. The mist gets drawn back into the pipe organ and then puffed out on top. And I think, Igor, you are getting the strong sense that this ghost haunts the pipe organ. The voice continues in spite of the fact that the dance has abated.
Welcome to what is, for some of you, your first class. It is going to be important that you pay attention. Some of you are a bit more experienced, and for those of you, I would encourage you to begin your meditations now. For the newest students among us, we are going to be learning here today how to remain. Your physical bodies are no longer in need of the same maintenance that they were, but your spirit, it shall try to forget itself. It's one of the dangers of being a ghost, but each and every one of you, you've got something inside you. It is worth protecting. You shall feel at times a great despair. At others you shall feel a sense that you wish to simply pass into the darkness behind, or underneath, however it is you imagine it.
A massive blare on these pipe organs as the melody continues, but becomes more gentle. You notice, Igor, that as this goes on, you feel more relaxed, and yet in this relaxation there's something that's a little bit like falling asleep while driving. It's a relaxation that you can feel there is a danger there, that letting yourself relax too much will send you plummeting backward into this ghastly cave. But each time you feel yourself slipping a little bit, the organ in a beautiful melody just blasts one more time and brings you back to the present. Clearly, this is a well-practiced sort of improvisational song that keeps you very present.
You may call me Eliza. I'm going to be teaching you how to remain present, and for this, we're going to need to explore somewhat. Going to need to explore what has kept you here.
Igor raises a tentative hand, and the organ music sort of takes on a bit of a trill, and the voice says,
Yes,
What is your name?
Igor, what is this for?
A sudden like rush of steam in an arpeggio comes out from this pipe organ, and this dancing figure once again appears smiling and takes a flying leap in front of you and then disappears back into the pipe organ with a great smile on her face, and she says,
You notice, of course, that there is something that lingers behind you or below you. Something dark, a feeling of losing yourself. And in order to keep yourself present in this world and not become a poltergeist, some ghastly thing that haunts a place and only remembers itself long enough to cause havoc, rather than that, we wish to help you maintain your true form. This body that you're in now, it can only be maintained through the maintenance of your spirit. And so, we're going to help you. Going to help you to maintain it. We're going to learn a bit about yourself. Igor, thank you very much for introducing yourself. I would like all of the new students to please come forward and tell me a bit of what you know of yourself. Understand that this is not something that will come easily to all of you, and if it does not, do not fret. We're going to find you in there somewhere, no matter how lost you may be. You are each worth preserving.
As these different students come forward and introduce themselves, this organ music begins to mellow out and takes on a very comforting tone, once again rising and surprising when you feel yourself drifting too far away. And as the class proceeds, you find that this is what meal times will be for you. Eliza explains that this is a sort of a cross between a meditation and something else. What you're going to be doing here is learning a bit about what you are and how you can help to preserve yourself. Tarua has now entered the room, this researcher, and the students are starting to separate into two groups. Tarua is waving you over into one of the corners here with the rest of the very, very new students. Meanwhile, the rest of them are sort of taking seats around this pipe organ. Some of them will go up and put a hand on the outside of the pipe organ to sort of feel the music more clearly. And you can see there are many different sort of practices of meditation going on here. Mindfulness is something that is vital for ghosts, as you begin to understand, and you will understand more as this class goes on. But as Tarua is waving you over, you are the last student here, and you stay in this sort of at the edge of this open space in the middle where this dancing ghost occasionally appears, and Igor asks,
Have you ever been to the other side yourself? Will we learn how to move on? Do we even want to?
The ghost appears in front of you once more, and instead of sort of passing you by in the midst of this dance, stops elegantly with one toe pointed out forward. Another smile. Not this, like, gorgeous, beautiful smile, but one that just shines and says,
Very nearly. I have been close to the other side. But it is not my time to go yet. Everyone has their time, and some of them are able to catch it as it passes. Some are not. I wish to ensure that you, Igor, you and all the other students here, when your time passes, you will pass with it.
Eliza dissolves back into the pipe organ, and you see other students, some of these upper class students, start to sort of interact with the music. Some of them themselves begin to dance gently, but many of them are sort of in quieter meditation. Some of them have sort of like partnered up with different folks and are having fairly earnest conversations here. And you go and join the other new students with Tarua. You see Pinelli here, and Pinelli sort of like sidles up next to you and says,
Well, this is not what I expected at all. It's good that I don't feel hungry, but what's strange, isn't it?
Terua says,
Welcome, new students. This is going to be a practical class, and what we're going to be learning to do here is learning a bit about yourselves. It's going to begin with some basic information, but you're going to learn over time, what is your legacy? What legacy must you complete? Because, as it turns out, this is rather important to ghosts.
Terua begins to explain a bit of history of Duskin, and I am absolutely going to count this toward your quest here, toward your vow to learn more about what Duskin are. What is the deal with Duskin, Igor? And as you listen, Terua does quite a bit of explaining.
There are 3 typical sorts of Duskin. The first, of course, being ghosts, the second being vampires, and the third being lycan. We suppose that they have come up in roughly that order, but ghosts are terribly ancient. The trouble with ghosts is that our legacies are undecided.
There are some questions that go up, and Terua seems more than willing to answer questions that come up, so Igor, if you have any, do let her know. But she continues,
In all of our history, legacy has been important for many. Our entries in the Grand Fable.
There are some whispers all around as the Grand Fable gets mentioned. Some of you may have heard this phrase before, but many probably have not. I'm going to call it a 50-50 whether you have, and you have indeed. You've heard of the Grand Fable before, Igor, and you know that is this sort of like, it's this concept, much like physics are in our human world of Earth, the realms of Residus have something called the Grand Fable. It is the story of all things underneath all things. More fundamental and powerful than gods or magic or anything is this idea of the Grand Fable. There are people who talk about it, there are even some people who claim to study it, but you've never heard someone take it quite this seriously before.
The Grand Fable is the record of those things that we have been in this world. Myself and all the rest of us ghosts, our entries in the Grand Fable are uncertain. Many who die have their entries already written in the Grand Fable. It is certain, and when they pass on. They go into the realms of death, and whatever they find there, they are no longer connected to this mortal world. However, for some, that legacy, that entry in the Grand Fable is uncertain. And when they pass, they remain. They remain until some certainty is brought to that legacy. We are each here going to have to find out, what is your legacy? Why is it uncertain? And what can you do to make it certain?
Pinelli pipes up and says,
Well, you're like upper class. Are you certain about your legacy?
Terua smiles a little bit and looks down, not quite ashamed, but clearly this is a very personal conversation. And she blushes, I suppose, as much as ghosts can, which I assume is sort of mostly the process of, like, you can see her cheeks don't get red. They remain sort of mostly transparent, like most here in this room, but instead of getting red, they sort of mystify and lose some of their resolution. She says,
No, indeed not. If I were able to solidify my legacy, I would pass on. Rather instantly, as far as I know, but there's a process. Each of us must learn the legacy that we might leave behind and complete it one way or the other. It is uncertain now. Whether it is because we have not made a mark on the world, or because the marks that we have made are in opposition to one another, or simply because the people that we leave behind do not know what our legacy should be, we must endeavor to complete our time here in the material world. It is difficult, and throughout that process, there will be, as Eliza mentioned, there will be a strong desire at times to give up, to move away, to let yourself fall into that darkness which over time does look a little friendlier. But you see, that is how most of the ghosts that you hear about, the ones that cause terrible trouble, the ones that inspire so much fear, that is how they appear. I don't know if you yourselves have found yourself seized with terrible urges to rattle door handles and extinguish torches in the homes of unsuspecting victims, but I anticipate, because you're here, many of you have not.
You actually notice, Igor, Penelli, standing beside you, actually, shuffles around on her feet a little bit and doesn't seem to be entirely comfortable with this. She seems a little embarrassed at this mention of, ghosts who have lost their way and caused some trouble. Tarua continues.
It is in the process of forgetting that ghosts can become poltergeists or other sort of haunting spirits that don't know what they're doing or why they're here. They simply haunt a place. Many of them will, unfortunately, find themselves in loops, not understanding that they are caught in a moment in time connected with some particular bit of legacy or trauma that haunts them. You see, as ghosts, we are more haunted than any creature in the realms. Rather than forgetting yourself, disappearing back into that darkness, we are going to keep you present. We're going to keep you corporeal. You will have this body. It's helpful to understand as your own, even if it does not quite behave like your body once did in life. It is good to remember what you looked like, who you were. It's an important part of remaining present. It is mindfulness that we teach here, which I realize has been a bit... well, it's been derided. It's been poo-pooed elsewhere in the realms. Yes, this is a rough world in which we live, and as Duskin we are going to find it rougher than most. Yet mindfulness, truly, even in life, is one of the most important disciplines. Without mindfulness, we will pass through this life, through our joys and our sorrows, through our difficulties and struggles. We'll pass through them not understanding from them, not learning from them, and certainly not making our mark in this world as we could.
Penelli continues to look pained by this conversation, and Igor, noticing this, says,
I know what you mean. I've had some troubles.
Igor says this to the group, but Penelli sort of, her eyes snap over to you, Igor, and she looks comforted, certainly. As a matter of fact, comforted to the point where we are going to mark a little bit of progress on your tracker here. Shall we? Make a good impression on Penelli. 1, 2, 3. You're now at 3 out of 10. Penelli smiles at you and looks reassured here. Tarua continues and says,
We are going to have you join the rest of the class here, but very soon, beginning this week in fact, we are going to begin our travels. You might call them travails, as some of the other ghosts have. I certainly considered them travails when I was going through them, but these travails are going to help us to understand what is your place in this world. What did you leave behind, and what is uncertain about your legacy here? Does anyone have any questions?
And over the course of this class, it is a rather short one. Because, of course, there are other classes to attend today. This is simply what you're going to be doing during meal times, because as ghosts, you do not need meals. There are going to be a collection of ghosts here who are going to sort of participate in these exercises, and much in the same way that you train your body, much in the same way that you train your mind and skills, so too are you going to train yourself to try and basically to be better ghosts. You understand from this conversation with Tarua, and like I said, if chat or if Igor has any questions, please do let me know, because I will explain more. Tarua is sort of taking on sort of a teacher's assistant sort of position here, while the actual beak in the room is Eliza, the pipe organ ghost. Tarua explains essentially what you have heard here, that being a ghost is kind of dangerous. There is a possibility that you will forget yourself, and that you will, if you do forget yourself, you don't pass on and sort of like then fully die. Instead, you become this sort of loose spirit that doesn't remember necessarily that it was a person. It simply will revolve around old places or old traumas or old people from their lives, and this is how you end up with poltergeists, people who, ghosts who haunt places, not necessarily fully understanding why. There are some that can even get more and more terrible over time, and Tarua even explains that ghosts who sort of do get lost in themselves, and who, for instance, haunted houses or haunted people, ghosts that end up stuck in these loops for long periods of time, their essence concentrates so much and gets so dark that these places can become really powerfully terrifying. She even notes that there are certain elements of that here in the castle. There are ghosts who have been here for too long and forgotten themselves too much to come back as far as they know. There are some ghosts, Eliza is one of them, who have gone almost all the way to the point where they have totally forgotten themselves and fully become poltergeists, but have managed to come back. But yeah, basically poltergeists are versions of ghosts that absolutely haunt a place, but they've forgotten why. They don't know why. They don't even know what they are doing, as much as it is just their spirit trapped in a loop. Igor has a question.
Was that armor one of the bad ghosts?
Tarua does indeed mention...
Yes, actually. There are quite a few ghosts that are haunting suits of armor here in the castle. We suspect that they were once a part of the King's Guard here in the castle when this castle was in active use, but they have come to haunt the armor in which they spent so much time, and they are now inexorably haunted into it. They're trapped. They have forgotten themselves, and they will never be able to leave the armor in which they find themselves. We have done quite a bit of study.
She looks a little sad at this point.
And we've had some very mild success, but mostly failure, trying to bring them out of that state. They have forgotten themselves, and that armor is where they will spend all time.
She looks quite sad about this. Igor pipes up and says,
Well, they can leave the armor. The one that we fought on our way in when we possessed the armor ourselves, it left. It cruised away down the hallway.
Tarua knits her eyebrows at this.
No, I'm sorry, Igor. The ghosts here in the castle, the ones in the armor, the ones that remain in the armor at the very least, we've made no progress. They can't leave the armor at all.
This one left the armor. We encountered it again in the dungeons underneath the castle.
You what?
Yes, is there no way to save them?
No, listen. You encountered a ghost that had left a suit of its armor.
Perhaps I tried to... when they possessed it, maybe I forced it out?
No. Igor, we've tried this so often. You can't make it leave. It is tied to the armor as much as anything.
Tarua certainly looks strange at this.
Even if you melt the armor down, I think that's what I did, is I forced it out by possessing it.
And Terua says,
No. Igor, listen. What you're describing is not possible.
Well, it left the armor.
and with a weak hit, I will give you this, Igor. Terua says, looking at you very seriously,
we're going to have to discuss this.
She takes you aside for a moment and says,
I need to consult with Eliza, but what you're describing is troubling. Terribly troubling. It should not be possible. Try to remember everything you can about what you encountered in the dungeons.
She leaves the group of new students alone, and Pinelli sort of looks at you, eyebrows raised, and says,
Getting into fights with a beak in the very first class? That ain't possible, Igor. You heard her. You seem pretty sure about what you saw, though.
It left the armor. There was no trace of it being left after the fight.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Once you start to get lost, you do sort of stick around, and I don't know what you did, but it doesn't sound like my experience. I actually got a little lost for a while. They were able to find me. Some vampires came and retrieved me, but I'd been haunting a spot for a bit, not knowing who I was, and they sort of brought me back. I guess I wasn't too far gone at that point, but I was really terrorizing some folks who I had been close to. It's a hard way to be in this world, being a ghost. I know you're new to it, but try to listen to what they have to say to you. It's important. You're gonna need people like this.
Igor says,
Yes, well, I'm starting a club of misfits. You should join us.
Misfits, huh? Yeah, maybe. I'll think about it.
she gives you a little grin. She has got freckles, sort of a Pippi Longstocking sort of vibe from this one. Got two long braids down her back and freckles, and she sort of grins at you and just sort of shakes her head. But I think, Igor, throughout this class, you do a bit more learning about the history of Duskin. And I'm marking 2 progress on your History of Duskin vow as well. You're currently at 2 out of 10. Eliza sort of dismisses people and says that in this coming week, there's going to be a more practical exploration, which is going to involve a fairly stressful exercise of diving into your past. The travails, as they have been called. Sounds like this may be sort of a slang term from some of the students, but Terua called them the travails. And you know that over the course of this next week, you are going to be engaging in these travails. And it's going to involve processing some things from your history. Which means, for those of you who are joining us this week, next week you can anticipate we're going to be diving into Igor's past a bit. We're going to do some fun flashback adventures where we do adventures that Igor had back in life, back in your hometown. So, I hope you are looking forward to that. I certainly am. Igor, as you leave this room, the pipe organ music sort of fades down to just a dull hum, a dull, comforting hum, and you leave this room knowing a lot more about ghosts and who you are than you ever did before. You know that next week, this coming week, is going to be difficult with these travails, these explorations of your past, your history, the legacy that you may have left that is uncertain as you try to explore your own entry in the Grand Fable. You leave and head back out into the castle. you've got classes to attend now. You are headed off to your very first class, your very first formal class, because, this is sort of a mealtime thing, even though it's kind of considered a class that you've had here. But you head off to your very first class, which is history. You have decided to pursue this, and this is something that many Duskin are going to be involved in, because it begins with sort of an exploration of the history of Duskin themselves. It is going to be about sort of the place that Duskin in general, not ghost specific, but this is going to be a mixed class of ghosts, lycan, vampires. It is going to be an exploration of the place that Duskin have in the realms of Arceus. And as you enter the classroom, you see the Beak, who is going to be presiding over this class.
Hello there, Igor. It's good to have you here. I've heard that you're going to be pursuing a course of history, so you and I are going to be seeing quite a bit of each other.
Indeed, it is Orif Barcerand, the vampire, in his top hat and tails with the small bones stitched all over them and the skeleton hand stitched onto the front of the top hat.
Have a seat, lad.
Meanwhile, elsewhere in the castle, Illyria is tearing into this chop here. It's certainly not the sort of thing that Illyria would have terribly enjoyed in life, and indeed, Illyria sort of looks for something to kind of balance it out, but none of the vegetables seem appetizing. They eat a few handfuls of berries from off the table, but mostly they are very much into the meat here, and it agrees with them. Illyria feels refreshed, and after really gorging themselves on on food here, as many of the others are doing, sees some vampires who are just finishing up their meal. Illyria was too distracted to see how precisely that went down, but looking at them, Illyria thinks that must have been a horrifying experience before sort of looking at themselves covered in blood, you might say, but, sort of juices from the meat, and thinks, well, I must look pretty horrifying too. Over at a table nearby, the crew of werewolves, led by Chu. Chu sort of wipes her mouth in the back of her hand and winks at Illyria before standing up and heading over toward the dwarf. Once again, this dwarf has a mohawk. This dwarf is black and has sort of tusks reminiscent of orcs, but now Illyria knows precisely why this individual has tusks. It's because they are a wereboar, and it seems that they spend, for whatever reason, the sort of were side of them is substantially part of them to the point where they maintain a small version of their tusks kind of at all times. This individual introduces themselves as Bristly, Brisly. Bristly is a Beak here, and as Chu and the other sort of lycans start to gather up around Bristly, he takes charge and says,
Hello, everyone. My name is Bristly. I am, as some of you experienced last night, a wereboar.
And looks at Illyria with eyebrows raised, big bushy eyebrows, bristly eyebrows that seemingly are a continuation of this mohawk down through the beard, trimmed on the sides, as is atypical for dwarves. Trimmed on the sides, but still long in the middle, just sort of one long stripe, interrupted only by the face.
I'm a wereboar, and I am also presiding over the expeditioneering corps here at school. I'm going to be teaching you some classes in survival, but today I think we're going to be looking at some other things. Some of you are new here, and we've got quite a few students.
He once again slaps the shoulder of the elf girl with the missing tooth.
Got quite a few students here who are going to need some help. Quite a few students who aren't quite used to what they become when that beautiful circulation of the moons passes in our direction. Now, I think today we're covering foundationals. Quite a few new students this time of year, and so it's time to head outside.
Bristly takes the lycan students, and they head on outside. This is a class that Illyria is going to be taking sort of solo, at the very least, away from Igor. And as they head out to the parade grounds, the moon overhead is bright. The moons, I should say, because there are indeed 7 of them. They are bright overhead. The sun is absolutely gone. Eating breakfast sort of took place during sunset, and now it is dark outside. But Illyria feels comfortable here in the darkness.
Now, last night, many of you found yourselves on a bit of a haunt that you might not have anticipated. I know it was challenging for some of you. Some of you even got a little bit hurt, but we are going to be taking good care of you. You are going to learn the layout of the grounds here so that you do not hurt yourselves when you change into whatever you're going to change into. Now, for some of you, especially you new ones, we don't know when you're going to change. Some of you, we don't even know what you're going to change into. Pretty rare, but it does happen. All the new students, I want you to line up over here. All of you experienced students, people who've been with us before, I want you to line up over on this side.
These 2 lines of students form up, and Chu looks over from one side, winks once again at Illyria, and sort of stands with her little posse. Illyria lines up with the new students, and Brisley, the dwarf Wereboar, accompanied by the sort of like bucktooth individual. He has got a big sort of like an enormous amount of hair underneath a big beanie, and he sort of appears to be the assistant for this particular class. He's sort of like standing up there, flexing his muscles. He is a pretty pale guy, but he is introduced by Brisley as,
this is my assistant upper class, Kozan. Kozan is going to be helping me to guide some of you today, but I expect all of our experienced class members to help out. So, how are we going to do this? Well, simple enough. Capture the flag.
And with that, folks, we end today's session looking out over the castle grounds in the middle of the night as cheers go up from the experienced students. Folks, I hope that you have enjoyed. Anyone can use at any time the links command, and that will summon up the link tree. That is the link to follow, but that's also the link to share around. If you think there are folks who will enjoy this show, if you think there are folks who may be curious about the world of tabletop RPGs and may even want to try one out, well, they can. I want you to come in here and hang out and play. Now, there is the Discord link over there, but you can also use the lore command, because the lore command is going to take you to the shared Google Drive, wherein we have got maps of where we're at. We have got the character sheets so you can follow them. We've got reference documents for the Iron Sworn game so that y'all know when you do level up, what sort of advancements can you put together. Invitation's invalid. That's really weird. And frankly, terrible. Okay, let me see. There's that. Does that one work for you? That sucks. How long has that been broken? I hope this is a new thing. because that's really bad. I need that link to be working. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to put it in my notes here. I need to fix my link tree. I'm just gonna go ahead and write this down and then basically slap this post-it note onto the middle of my monitor because this is super important. Fix Discord. Okay, there we go. And I will say I've been noticing there are some issues with links on Discord in general. Some of the links to like my events and stuff have been behaving a little strangely. That's no good. No good at all. I hope Discord isn't having some trouble on their end because I really like Discord. I would love it if we didn't have any issues with it. Folks, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Sam. This is Sidecar Stories, and this is our Wednesday show, Side Cannons. This is our Wednesday show, currently Campaign 2, Night School at Vesperale Academy. And I'm having a ton of fun. I thought today was a pretty cool session. We learned quite a bit. We have got some new information. You have got a little hiding spot. You know of some tunnels, Igor. You know of a secret little spot in the castle where you can get some supplies if you can sneak in there and you don't cause too much trouble. You also know at the back of that room there is a secret passage where you know you can get into the dungeons underneath the castle itself. Now, you also know it's not entirely safe in there. You found a little diary entry. It says, "Dear Diary" at the beginning. But I'll just review that really quick because it's not too long. It says, "Dear Diary, it is a terrible thing to find myself between the academy and the house. The academy is my home. My crimes are forgiven. I may yet be redeemed. But the fangs of the house sink deep. They will not be resisted or ignored. I fear that I must give them what they ask. I will be that which they have so long desired, their eyes and their ears inside the castle. I don't know their plans, and I shall never ask. I can only hope they do not desire to tear down what is built here." You found that interesting little note. You've got some alchemy supplies, which, if you can get a moment away, you can go ahead and try to brew some stuff up. You also have hit your first classes here. First, a sort of this sort of mindfulness thing wherein you are going to be encountering your travails starting next week. These are going to be difficult journeys into your history to try and understand the legacy that you should be leaving behind, and how you can sort of pass into a more peaceful place. You've also got history class with the Bone Man, apparently, Orif Barsarand, this beak who apparently teaches history, and he is excited to have you in class. Meanwhile, Illyria has ended up back at school and recovering from some injuries sustained. It is tough to sneak out of the castle, but we have decided we're going to try and do it again, because remember, you have to finish up casing the town of Dawngreet, Igor, in case the wild stallions come back for you. And when they come back for me, I had better have that chest in my possession. We don't know what their reach is, but we know they've infiltrated the towers pretty well. So I think Igor and Illyria are both rightfully anxious about our status on those quests given to us by the wild stallions. For those of you who are not aware, you can use the Recitus command as well. And I should combine the Recitus and lore commands into the same thing. But basically, you can follow that bit.ly link, bit.ly/lorekeeper's tome, capitalize those words, lorekeeper's tome, capitalize L, capital T, and that will take you to the maps and the character sheets. But the recitus.fandom.com, that is our wiki. And have I done a good job of keeping it updated as of this second campaign? No, I have not. But I'm going to be better. Finally, we're going to talk about our vows here. I just want to review these so that we can make sure we mark any progress that we've made here, because this is how this game advances. The game of Ironsworn advances entirely based on vows, and these vows are used to sort of determine... We set our own quests, in essence. Igor, Your vows are, number 1, case the Crossroads town before the Wild Stallions return. I don't think we've made any progress on that this session. Number 2, avenge your own death. I don't think we've explored that this session. Number 3, make a good impression on Pinelli. We have explored that, and you've made 3 progress out of 10. Number 4, pursue academics. Which I think, as of your history classes, are going to be able to begin. And you've made 1 progress on that out of 10. All vows are out of 10. It's just they're different based on which how difficult they are will determine how many ticks you get each time you make some progress. And then finally, learn some about the history of Duskin, and today you made 2 progress toward that, which puts you at 2 out of 10. So we are starting to make some actual genuine progress here towards some of our vows. Y'all let me know. I am confident that we've marked all the progress that we need to mark for today, but y'all let me know, how do you feel about those vows? I want to hear about it here, but I also want to hear about it over in Discord, because Discord is where we do our midweek discussion on this. Please let me know over in the Realms of Recidus channel how you're feeling about these vows, other things that you would like to do. It's a great spot to discuss, like, once you do have some XP under your belt, what are you going to spend it on? Because that Lorekeeper's Tome will take you to the Google Drive where you can find the assets list, which is sort of where all the advancements take place in this game. Deathrave says, I really think to start a group of allies, trusted allies as a vow. And Deathrave, I think I'm going to handle that in terms of individual relationships. Once again, if you put something over there, as Deathrave has compiled an excellent list, like I said before, Deathrave has compiled an excellent list of things that could well be vows. In this instance, I think I'm going to make that, instead of being a vow, I'm going to just make it a person-by-person thing. The people who you have made, like, a good impression on, they are going to be, like, some of your trusted allies. We're going to handle that more in terms of bonds than vows. Does that make sense? Because you are going to forge bonds with people. You have got one sort of in progress with Pinelli right now. But yeah, so in other words, absolutely, Deathrave, I'm going to be including that in the campaign. I'm just not handling it as a vow. I'm handling it with a different mechanic. But yes, absolutely. Igor is thinking, and Igor, this makes a lot of sense for Igor. Igor is kind of a planner, not necessarily social as much as analytical and tactical, and knows that it would be good to have some friends around here. I'm guessing this is what Igor has been doing for most of his life, is trying to understand, okay, who are the people around here who can keep me safe, and who I can sort of rely on. I think you've been doing that for a long time, and why is that? What sort of life have you led? Well, I'm super excited to find out more about that next week, because we're going to be doing some travails, which means you, Igor, are going to be exploring your past in the form of some sort of basically deep ghost meditation, almost like a hypnosis. So we're going to return and actually play out some adventures from Igor's past. Super exciting. So, yes, like I said, if y'all have ideas that you want to cover, I promise, I do not promise that I will handle them like you think that I will necessarily, but I can promise I want to reflect the things that y'all are interested in. And so Deathrave put an excellent list over there. If anybody else has any other thoughts, please do put them in the Realms of Recidus channel over in Discord, because I would love to discuss them. It sounds fantastic. And so, yeah, let me know how you're feeling about all of that. Finally, Illyria has got 5 as well. Number 1, return to Brackwater, ready to settle down. And depending on how things go at school here, I may just abandon that vow. It depends on how I'm feeling here. I still have it. I think it's still in Illyria's heart that their family wants them to come home and to settle down, as the rest of their family always has. But maybe they will, maybe they won't. Right now, the plan definitely is to do so, but we'll see how things go here at school. Number 2, the Wild Stallions want me to bring something south for them. I've got it in a box back at camp, but we have to go retrieve that, which may be something that we handle next session, or possibly the session after that if we've got time. Number 3, discover the truth of the underbrush. I don't know how I'm going to make progress on that, but we have to discover more about that thing. Number 4, find out about my condition. Certainly, I'm going to be learning a bit about that in my next session here. And then number 5, pursue expeditioneering. And of course, this is the class to do it, the one that I've just entered. So there we go. Now, folks, I thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you have had an excellent time. I am messing with some of my notification processes over on Discord, so I do apologize if things get a little bit wonky. My name is Sam. This is Sidecar Stories. We're going to be coming back tomorrow because we are starting book 2 of the Hunger Games. I hope y'all are excited for that. I really, really am. I remember a decent bit of Hunger Games book 2, but not everything, and so I'm excited to explore it just as y'all are. Super fun. Y'all, are you stoked? I'm stoked. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. Pacific time. I will see you then. If you've got any questions, please do let me know over in Discord. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time on Side Cannons!